we're going to create the hinge joint for our neck and then the robot head. And before we do that, we need to make a little slice or an opening here at the very top for that head to fit in. And so if you actually look at our picture of our model, and we'll look at this here, you can see there's an opening here in the front side of that. And so we need to create that. To do that, we need to do a little bit more knifing, some sliding over of one side of this middle line here, and then delete the polygons there at the top to open it up, to keep it real simple. So let's take a look at our perspective window here, and as you can see, we just have the one line here. Now we could knife all the way around and then open it up. That does add a few more polygons to what we're using. But the other thing that we could do is just use an inner extrude on these polygons here. So we're going to go ahead and select these top polygons, and I'm going to make sure I have only select visible elements checked on, because I'm going to be coming around and painting these. Again, I click and hold to paint, and I hold my shift key there to select extras. Okay. I can also use my command key if I want to deselect something. So that's something good to know. Alright, so what we're going to do now is select, after we've selected those objects, we're going to hit MW on our keyboard. And what that is going to do is give us our extrude inner. And we're going to preserve those groups as we extrude that in. So as you see, what that does is it creates polygons that are still attached. Everything is still four-sided, which is what we're looking for. But it's also given us an area that we can delete, basically, for our neck. Now, if I wanted to, I could do another extrude inner. That gives us a little bit more volume to work with, but I'm going to keep this, again, simple. That's kind of the point of what we're doing here. So I'm going to hit delete and open that up, and that's where our neck will fit in, our object. So we kind of created the shoulders there. So what we need to do now is create the neck. And again, if you can see this, it's very much like our knee. It's kind of the same sort of rotational joint that our knee has. And we could just select all of the polygons where that knee is at that we've created here, and then clone those up to the top. And that's what we're going to do. So to select those, we could use the right menu, and that's what I'm going to do. And we just need to get one of these here. And we'll probably end up selecting this middle selection where the knee rotates around. That's okay. We can actually clone that into the neck also for it to rotate around. So I'm going to get my selection tool here, rectangle selection, make sure that I'm in polygon mode, and make sure only select visible elements is turned off, because I want to get everything here. And I'm going to select down, and I'm going to stop right here and just select all of those. Alright. Now what we're going to use is functions, and then we're going to use a clone tool to clone that. And as you can see over here in the attributes manager of that clone tool, I'm going to create one clone, and then I'm just going to drag it up. And when I offset this, it's going to offset on the Y, so it's going to go up and make this 200 centimeters. Click apply. Now it's jumped clear up here into the middle of my body. All right. I'm going to hit my move tool, and now I'm going to drag that selection up. And then I'm going to drag that selection in the top menu to kind of center it. If I look at my front window here, I can center that in right in there. And that gives me a place from which my neck of my model can extrude from, or can rotate on. And so the rotational device is up, back, and forth. Just as such, and we can make some modifications to that again later. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to extend or extrude a polygon off the top here on which the neck or the head can set. And so I'm going to select the top two polygons here. And one thing, if you notice this, or if you look at this, it actually has an angle on it. So if I extrude that up, it's actually going to extrude up at an angle and get larger. One thing we can do is we can flatten that out. And what that does is, you can see, already created a little bit of a problem here. So you notice when I created this cylinder for my knee, I did not connect the points on that. So let's do that real fast. I'm going to hit select a polygon here, and then I'm going to hit UF on my keyboard, and what that does, it does a fill selection for anything that's connected to that polygon. I'm going to hold my shift key down and select those two faces now also. I'm going to go functions, optimize, and again, they're pretty close together already, so I'm going to click OK. And let's see if that took care of our problem. Okay, live selection tool, select those two, and again on the y-axis here in the coordinates, not the manager, attributes manager, but the coordinates of the object, I'm going to click 0 and enter, and what that did is it actually flattened out that area. Right, so now we'll get a really nice extrusion come up from that. It'll go very straight. Looking over here for my model, I'm going to extrude that straight up and right into where the head would be. Now, if you look at my model, or the picture here that I had drawn, is it's a little skinnier in this area, and I can again change that once we start making the robot. For right now, I'm just going to leave it as is and modify it later for our purposes. Okay. So let's create the head, and we're going to use a cube to do that. There's a couple other ways that we could obviously do that. We could just do a spline and then extrude it back. But the cube is going to allow us to create as few polygons as possible. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and we'll use the knife tool to finish it up. Okay. So click a cube in the parametric primitives to add that cube. Use the move tool and the model tool, and we're going to move that cube kind of right in the middle of my image again, here, which is the y axis here in the green, and then again I'm just kind of making a guess here on the size. I'm going to scale this down on the so that it fits in that axis. And then if I click the live selection tool and click on my cube here, you can see everything came down at the same ratio. Everything's 171.3. I'm going to go ahead and just do the y-axis here first. I could pull on the orange handle also. Bring that down. That looks pretty close. And we look pretty good in this direction. Let's look in the right side. Looks like we need to pull that orange handle. And there we go. And there's our robot's head. Now we could leave the head square. The robot doesn't have to have these angles that we have on it. I'm just going to modify mine. Again, make it look however you want after we get through with this tutorial. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make some knife areas so that I can bring in those corners a little bit more to finish this up. So we're going to make our cube editable, as you can see here, and then we're going to hit our knife tool and use polygon tool, and so I'm going to make a knife selection here around some certain areas to create an area where I can pull these down, up and down. So in my front menu, spacebar, select it, knife, I'm going to make a knife selection here and here and right across the side and the top here and down here on these lines, and that should allow me again to move in these angles a little bit more for what we're doing. If you notice also too that it comes in, it tapers in on the side, so I'm going to also make some cuts here. So spacebar, select that window, K on the knife tool. I'm going to make this big so I can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to cut here and here. Alright, so let's start adjusting the points for this. Hit my spacebar to get my live selection tool, make sure only select visible elements is off, click outside and paint. And I'm going to drag this back. Notice again I painted the one behind it also. That's because if I had dragged these points in, they would have actually overlapped, and we don't want that to happen. So I'm going to kind of move them in unison there, and what that does is, whoops, it creates, it keeps our polygons at a more relative size. So we're not having one real small polygon versus a really large one for the most part. Just select these two and these two, and I could also use, like we did before, my scale tool to bring that in. Pull this one back out just a little bit. Oops. And same thing with this one, scale tool. So we're going to scale it in, and then we can make adjustments to that later. Let's look at it from the front now, and we're going to be bringing these points in, just like we did with the other ones. Scale. Bring those in quite a bit. And these four here. I'm just going to do these all at once and then make some minor adjustments. Scale those in, stop. And the bottom ones. Scale those in and stop. Alright, so let's look at it in perspective mode. Hit H on your keyboard, and what that does is it jumps you back so you can see everything that you have, and there we have a basic model. Not super exciting. A couple things I want to do is, again, I talked about polygons being a little bit close, and you can see we have this one large polygon here. We're going to slide some points over, and we're just going to use the scale tool to do that, so that we decrease this space and increase these two spaces on the side, so they're more relative in size. So live selection tool. I'm going to select those two polygons, scale, and bring it in. Now these are a little bit more even. Again, what this does is, by keeping the polygons the same size, is when we get ready to put textures on here, our materials, what they do is when we project a picture onto that, which is basically what a texture is, it maps on there. It looks a little bit more even. If we have a real small polygon next to a big polygon, sometimes that texture can look stretched in one area, and it looks very odd. So it's always a good rule of thumb to try to keep your objects or your polygons as equal in size as possible if you can. Now the smaller those polygons get, the easier that is to do, but in this case again we're working with a very low poly model. And as you can see, I'm going to go ahead and drag this down just a bit along here. So now these are quite a bit more even than they were before. And drag that up. Alright, that looks pretty good. Let's do the front. And again, I can't drag this one over, but I can drag these two from the side in just a little bit more. Now if I hold down my space key here as I drag, and then it'll snap to a certain area, or my shift key, it'll actually snap to a certain area when I'm using that. So I'm going to bring that back just a little bit there. There we go. These are fairly even, a little bit smaller down here, but not too bad. If I wanted to, I could make some adjustments with these areas, but I'm not too concerned with those right now. Everything else looks pretty good. Alright, the last thing that we have to do is combine these two objects, the head and the model itself. Make sure you are in, don't have anything selected here, just click in the window, objects, connect and delete, after you've selected both of them. We're going to call this robot, and make sure you save your project. And so by saving that, then we have our full model. Anything else that we need to do here will be relegated to basically refining the model now. We have the head, the neck, the arms, the hands, the feet, the knees. Everything looks pretty darn good there. So if you save that, you're finished with this tutorial.